These are all the books that I read in September. I've organized them from my favorites all the way down to my least favorite. So let's go ahead and get started with the favorite book that I read in September. That book is The Ruins by Scott Smith. It was scary, it was creepy, and it's like my favorite kind of book where the characters are thrown into this very perilous situation and they have to try to stay alive and figure their way out, and they're hungry and cold and they're in like the worst possible scenario. So in The Ruins, we are following a group of friends who go on vacation to Mexico. One member of their group ends up following this girl that he meets, and he leaves the rest of the group behind. They end up going and like looking for him, following him into the Mexican jungle. It's very creepy though, because on their way into the jungle, they get this cab and the guy is telling them like, why do you want to go there? Like, this is not a good place. And he's basically warning them not to go. But they want to find their friend, so they continue. It becomes like a gruesome fight for survival. The suspense and the dread in this book is relentless. It reminds me of some scary movies I watched. For example, I'm thinking off the top of my head, the movie Evil Dead Rise. It is horrible, and it just keeps going and going and getting worse and worse and worse, and there is like no break. Around like 30% in, there's a scene where the characters end up going down this well. I was so creeped out by it that I actually ended up having a dream about this book. So books I can think of off the top of my head that I had dreams about ended up being like my favorite book of the year. So like, I know The Haunting of Hill House gave me a nightmare. A Good House for Children gave me a nightmare, and then The Ruins gave me a nightmare. And I can tell you guys, this book is probably going to be very close to #1 favorite of the year, other than maybe, oh, there's a couple others. Come Closer by Sarah Gran was excellent, as well as Paradise Rot. Oof. But I really love The Ruins. Those are probably like top 3, unless I'm forgetting one. Another thing I really did enjoy about this book was the very creative concept. I did think of the Goosebumps book, Stay Out of the Basement. It gave me the same sort of feelings as like fungus mushroom horror makes me think of. There's a lot of gross body horror in this book. It actually reminded me a lot of the book The Troop. Another one that I really enjoyed that book. There's something about body horror that makes me really remember a book, and it really sticks in my head, like whether I want it to or not. And there is a scene towards the very end of this book with one of the characters and a knife. It is so grotesque. It is so brutal and horrible and horrifying. I cannot stop picturing and thinking about in like very, very vivid detail, and it makes me feel squeamish and sick. Anytime a book can make you feel something, I mean, that is a strength of the writing. There was another scene that was kind of like a red flag for me, and it's a scene where a male character is talking about a female character, and he is like really sexualizing her. But after he's done doing that, he starts saying how like she has such a childlike face, and she actually looks more like a little girl than a woman. And it was so weird to me, where we're like sexualizing this girl but then also infantilizing her at the same time. It was just kind of icky, and I wish the author could have left that out. It was like very, very unnecessary. It was such a small scene though, so I chose to kind of move past it, and it doesn't really detract from my feelings from this book overall, but it is something like that I want to talk about in my review, because it stood out to me as kind of like a red flag. Like, we didn't need that, you know? The characters in this book, they are very flawed people, and they start really unraveling as you would in their situation. They start making really selfish, bad, terrible decisions. It could get frustrating reading about them, because a lot of times they were like self-destructing. They were like chaotic. They were messy. The ending of this book, oh my gosh. The ending of this book really, really stuck with me. These characters try so hard to hang on. Literally everything just continues to go wrong the entire book. It's like they cannot catch a break. There is something about an ending that is kind of like tragic that makes a book particularly unforgettable to me. Heartbreak and tragedy, and I really love that. The emotional impact of this one was so real. I was heartbroken. I was so sad and distressed. I had this book checked out from my library and my loan was about to expire, and I was so sad. I was like, no, I was rushing, trying to finish this before I only had like an hour left or something, and I got down to the end of the time period. I opened my library app and it said, your loan has expired, but we'll give you another hour as long as you don't exit the app. So I literally only had 11 minutes left and I was on the edge of my seat. Like, I don't know what I would have done if the library would have like taken it back when I only had 11 minutes left and I needed to know what was going to happen to these people. I definitely will have to purchase myself a physical copy of this book for my shelf, for my collection, because it's definitely a new favorite. The next book is The White Road by Sarah Lotz. I did enjoy this one as well, not as much as The Ruins, but this is another one that had a lot of good parts to it. It had a lot of strengths, not a ton of things that I disliked about it. This book is actually similar to The Ruins in a lot of ways. The Ruins is like, we are trying to survive from start to finish. Like, we are in the worst case scenario and we don't know how we are going to make it out. The White Road has aspects of that, but it's not like from start to finish. So in The White Road, we are following our main character, Simon, and he runs an internet blog. And this blog is kind of like sleazy. It's very like exploitative. What he is trying to write this story on is this group of cave divers who ended up getting trapped and dying in this like underground cave. And what he wants to do is go climb down this cave, find the bodies, and film them for his website. So he is a little bit of like a morally gray character. Some of the choices he's making are a little bit questionable. So this cave system where he's trying to go film these people who died down there, it has been banned to the public because it's very dangerous. So he ends up finding this guy on the internet who says like, I can take you down there. I've been down there before and I'll take you if you pay me. So when he meets this guy, he is so sketchy. He follows him down the cave even though red flags are going, and this guy is very unstable. What happens down there is like kind of horrifying. It is so scary to me. It is like the scariest setting to me of anything, is being trapped in a cave. This man starts having these like dark fits of paranoia. So not only are you trapped like in the darkness, it's claustrophobic, tight spaces, you are so isolated. And then this man that you're with starts acting like really crazily paranoid and thinking that you are out to get him. It was very vivid, very disturbing, claustrophobic, very, very strong start to this book. So that was probably my favorite part of this book, was the scene in the beginning where he is going into this cave, and then also the very, very end. So after the whole cave stuff, the next thing that he does is he's going to try to climb Mount Everest. This is kind of where the story slowed down a bit for me. I thought that it would be just as fast-paced as the cave diving because that setting is also really interesting. I was having like a little bit of a hard time keeping my interest. It does pick back up a little bit because there is a scene on Mount Everest that is pretty scary where we see like what a lack of oxygen at that altitude can do to a person, like both their body and their mind. The remaining portion of the book kind of shifts tone, and it goes from being this sort of like survival story thriller into this like more supernatural horror. And a lot of the bad, questionable, morally gray choices that he's made throughout the book start to come back to haunt him. The ending of this book is its strength. I mean, like I said, I loved the cave scene in the very beginning, but then I also loved the ending of this book. It has a very ambiguous ending. The question of whether it is real or not is a part that is kind of like ambiguous. It's very haunting. It will stick with me. That is the making of a favorite book. So from here on out, we are starting to get into the books that were some of my least favorite reads. I would say this next book I liked a little bit more because I really enjoyed the first half of the book, so that's why it is sitting right here at number 3. That book that I'm talking about is A Touch of Jen by Beth Morgan. We are following our 2 main characters, Remy and Alicia. They are obsessed with this girl named Jen, and they both basically stalk her on Instagram. They start talking to her, and somehow, magically, Jen invites Remy and Alicia to go on vacation with her and her friends. There's so many times where Remy and Alicia like do something a little bit awkward, and then these people call them out on it. Like, it made me feel bad for them. Like, can you guys just let it go? Like, don't make them feel weird, you know? Like, I hate when people do that. So the first half of this book, I liked, and I was invested in the characters. Particularly, I did really like Alicia's character. I didn't like Remy at all, and I don't think you're supposed to. What did frustrate me about his character, we really don't get any background on him at all. Like, I know nothing about him other than he is obsessed with Jen. I felt like Alicia had some depth to her. She is described as having like very abusive parents, and also she's had this very like devastating eating disorder. She is very troubled. She's kind of like tragic in a way, and she's also very socially awkward. I liked Alicia. I found her very compelling. I felt bad for her. Sometimes I was a little bit repulsed by her. She is sort of in this like descent, transforming into becoming Jen. I was really hooked at this point because I love books that is about obsession. This was where this book had the most potential, with Alicia's character kind of like becoming Jen. I thought that that could be like a really surreal, mind-bending, like psychological direction to take this book into. There is a very major shift halfway through this book. There is this sort of twist. I'm gonna put a spoiler section in here because the rest of my thoughts I really can't tell you without spoiling everything that happens. The big thing that happens, the major shift, is that Alicia's character ends up dying. She's riding her bike home from work and her chain breaks on her bike and she goes flying into a dumpster. Alicia was the most interesting character to me, and I really wanted to see her like transform completely into Jen and maybe have this like face off with Jen at the end where it's like Jen versus Jen. I lost all interest in this story. I feel like Remy was such a horrible character that we really needed the balance of Alicia to balance him out. I did not want to read about his like disturbing male fantasies. It kind of reminded me a lot of the book You by Carolyn Kepnes. Remy starts seeing this like reptilian monster following him and hunting him, and towards the end of the book a lot of the side characters end up dying by this monster. It kills them. Remy goes to Jen's apartment because he has this weird delusion that if Jen holds him on the couch and tells him everything's gonna be okay, then the monster will go away or something. So he goes up to Jen's apartment, and it's so sad because she's like alone in her apartment about to take a bath, and she lets him in for some reason, and she's like, oh, my boyfriend's in the bathroom. And then Remy finds out that he's not actually in the bathroom. She's alone. And from there, basically, he's able to murder her. My interpretation is that this wasn't like some surreal paranormal thing going on. Remy was psychotic and lost in delusion, and he is the one who actually murdered Jake, Carla, and obviously Jen. It was all a projection. It just made this book so unnecessary to me. Like, I wish I could have known that that was how it was going to end, and I would have felt like, what is the reason for me to read this? I didn't want to keep reading, and I probably shouldn't have kept reading. I think I would have been happier if I didn't read that ending. The next book is Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents by Lindsay C. Gibson. It's kind of like a self-help book. I can see the value in this type of book. The power in it is that it can provide validation and speak to a lot of people's experience. But at the same time, like, this book didn't really read to me like that. Like, it didn't read as this sort of like healing guide or anything. What it mostly read to me was like a checklist. And it's a checklist of what emotional immaturity is. The author is so focused the entire book on like diagnosing and explaining every single trait and characteristic of what an emotionally immature person is. It just became very repetitive. I would have liked for her to talk a little bit about what creates emotional immaturity. I'm looking for the tools. There weren't tools given to me in this book, and I wish it was. I didn't really find like healing at all from this book. I don't feel like my trauma was healed, and maybe there's other books that I could read about like childhood trauma that would reach me a little bit better. I don't think this book is horrible by any means, but I don't think it was for me. So we are now at the final book, meaning this was my least favorite book, and that book is The Unseen by Ania Ahlborn. So I was really excited. I thought that the synopsis sounded super interesting. They didn't match up with my expectations. This family lives in this like remote Colorado house, and they have this huge expanse of woods behind their house. And then one day, this little boy wanders out of the woods, and the mother spots him like standing in their yard or something, and she takes him in. They're trying to find his family, and nobody's coming to claim him. They cannot find his family, and also the boy does not talk at all, so he can't tell them where he's from, what happened to him. The mother is absolutely obsessed with having another baby. That is the only thought in her head. She is putting all her energy into. This boy comes into their life, and he becomes like this surrogate of, she puts all her like hopes and needs into him, that he is like her new baby. They take him home. The dad does not want to. He does not want to like foster this boy at all. He does not have like good feelings about it because, like I said, this boy does not talk. What they're thinking is that he may have had like a very traumatic childhood. So the dad does not want to take that on, but the mother insists. So they take him home. A lot of weird things start happening to this family. We have our two parents, there's Isla and Luke, and then they have 5 kids. This book had character perspective switches between all 7 of these family members. It was so hard for me in the beginning to figure out and keep track of who was who. Some of those like middle child daughters, they felt like they could have been completely like, we don't need your character, you know, like you are adding nothing to this and I can't tell you apart from the rest of your siblings. The ending was really, really unsatisfying. There is a lot that happens in the last couple chapters, like probably too much, because I got so confused. Everything is just like thrown at once. It feels like nothing gets resolved. The twist at the end is so random. It is weird. It's like, well, I like a weird twist, you know, but this was like out of nowhere. We get this sort of explanation. It's like, really? That's what's been going on this whole time? Like, okay, I wasn't expecting that. Like, that feels a little bit random, but okay. Every single one of these other books, I can name at least one thing that I like about them. This one, I don't think I have one thing I like about it. So I could rate it a 1 star, but at the same time, 1 star is like, well, I hated that, you know, I hated it. And this, I don't know if I hated it, like I didn't find it offensive, but I also don't have anything I liked about it, so I rated it a 2 star. So that was all of the books that I read in September. Honestly, that's a really good reading month for me at this point, like 5 books. It doesn't seem like a ton, but I'm really basically only reading for 1 hour a day. Sometimes I read a little bit more than that, but to finish 5 books in a month when you're only reading 1 hour a day, like that's pretty good for me. I'm happy with that. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.